This video is brought to you by Charge. Not long ago, I posted on social media that I'm ditching my iPhone 16 Pro for the newly released iPhone 16e, and boy, did the comments deliver. Let's just say that being called a sheep sounds like a compliment at this point. But all the useless negativity aside, I did promise I will share my reasons as to why I'm making this ridiculous move, and there are 3 of them, which I'm sure will make sense, but only if you hear the full story, which starts something like this. After the release of the 16e, I was honestly disappointed, no surprise there. I happened to be one of the first people who caught the courageous omission of MagSafe during that brief intro video.
Hold on.
And it just didn't make any sense to me. Why would Apple compromise on something they should be proudly leaning into? I mean, how much are they really saving by leaving out the magnets? Of course, I knew it was probably part of a bigger tactic that makes sense to someone at Apple HQ, but still, it felt like a strange move.
Not sure if you caught this, but even Apple themselves are not promoting the 16e on the homepage of their website, which makes me think even more that this is sort of like an experiment of a device. But you never know.
And then came the more predictable complaints. The 60Hz refresh rate and the price tag. None of it helped. I started seeing this phone more as a testing ground, a guinea pig if you will for what's under the hood, and a stepping stone for Apple's upsell ladder. So genuinely, I started debating whether I should even bother getting one to cover on the channel, or if it is better to skip this thing altogether. So, a few weeks later, I unboxed it, placed it to the side, and figured I already know exactly what I want to say. Downgraded processor, thicker bezels, no promotion, no MagSafe, questionable price, not much to be excited about. But then, I remembered the new C1 modem Apple put inside. And me being me, I decided to do what I always do. Fully switch to it, because honestly, how else can I really know what's changed unless I live with it? I was 16e equipped, and I'm genuinely glad I made that move. It turned out to be both eye-opening and unexpectedly exciting. By the way, if you end up enjoying this video, subscribe, because why not? Before I get into the reasoning behind my switch, I just have to say, the design of this phone is a breath of fresh air. In a sea of over-designed and awkward camera bumps, having something this clean and minimal is genuinely refreshing. It's lightweight, it doesn't wobble on the table, and while the bezels are a bit thicker and the notch feels like a throwback, I honestly don't have much to complain about. I do wish the edges were a bit more rounded, more like the 16 Pro, because these feel slightly sharper, kind of like the pre-15 Pro days. But that's forgivable. What's not forgivable is the lack of MagSafe. You've been asking about the ring I stuck on the back, and let me just be clear. This is just a simple MagSafe ring by Rhino Shield. I thought it looked great, but I had to take it off because it kept shifting out of place. The glass on the back just doesn't give it enough grip, and I wasn't about to throw a bulky, ugly case on a phone that already looks this clean, so yeah. I had to get creative.
So the slippage was because of the lack of non-glass real estate on the back of the device. So what I did was I found an old D-brand skin from I don't know how many years ago from a device which I no longer have, and I cut it in the shape of the ring itself, a tad smaller so that it's not visible from the sides. And I ended up with this portal-like MagSafe solution that is stuck directly on the phone itself. Now, this is not perfect by any means, but it is a temporary solution I'm willing to live with until I find a better case or skin or MagSafe bag that I can attach to this phone. And I think I'm the only one with such a solution at this point.
Now, I know a lot of people like to say that 120 Hz versus 60 Hz doesn't really matter, that most users won't even notice the difference. But the thing is, I did notice it. And I kept noticing it, especially during those first few days. Every time I set the 16e aside and picked up either the OnePlus 13 or the Ultra, both of which I was also using daily. Even the scribbly hello during the unboxing felt like it dropped a few frames right out of the gate. The thicker bezels didn't help either. They made the keyboard feel noticeably smaller compared to the almost equally sized 16 Pro. You see, on paper the 16E is a bit shorter but similar in width, yet those bezels make it feel more cramped when typing. So again, if you're coming from a Pro model, there's just not much here to be impressed by. Same goes for the sluggish 7.5 watt wireless charging and the predictable 20 watts wired option, which is what I normally rely on. Talking about charging, Charge's signature design and aesthetics language is hard to ignore, especially with their latest ShargeGeek 140 power bank. Available in sleek, black or white monochromatic finishes, this translucent beauty packs a hefty 20,000 mAh or 72 watt-hours capacity while delivering a total output of up to 140 watts. With its dedicated 100 watt port, it can easily top up my MacBook Pro or any of my other devices for that matter. And when it's time to recharge, 65 watt input gets it back to full in about an hour and a half. Beyond these striking looks, I really appreciate how slim it is. Chunkier alternatives are a hassle when packing for travel. And honestly, the built-in smart display is such a thoughtful touch. It shows real-time input and output, so I always know what's happening. Oh, and it's airline safe, so whether I'm heading out of town or just running errands, it's now part of my everyday carry. Right now, if you use my code ThisIsE10, you'll get 31% off the ShargeGeek 140, so feel free to check out the very first link in the description below. So as soon as I set up the phone, it was business as usual until I decided to call my wife on my way home. You see, I live outside the city and my commute is usually around 20 to 25 minutes. I call this catching up on my correspondence time. A call time span which, if occupied by a single call, is guaranteed to drop at least 3 very specific locations while driving, something I've gotten used to over the years. This time though, as I was talking to my wife, I never lost connection.
I can hear you loud and clear right now though.
In fact, I didn't even get the usual voice quality degradation I was expecting. You know that moment when the GSM network starts to struggle and the voices turn garbled or robotic just before the call drops? To make sure I wasn't imagining things, I kept her on the line all the way into the garage, shut the door behind me, which always kills the call, and nothing. She was still there. Can you hear me now?
Okay, good. Can still hear you.
The next day, I ran some tests and pushed things even further. I started doing cellular speeds in areas where coverage is usually spotty, only to find rock-solid signal. Not just that, but data speeds were double what I was getting on my 16 Pro. Even the Ultra couldn't keep up with the kind of signal stability this single-lens phone was pulling off. At that point, I was genuinely impressed. And just like that, reason number 1 for my potential switch was born. Because this alone is a meaningful upgrade for a device that first and foremost is still a phone. I can't wait to test it while traveling because that's where most phones reveal their weak spots in signal performance and longevity. To top it all off, the next thing that blew my mind and officially became reason number 2 was the battery life. Having used 3 generations of these smaller Pro models, I was used to, let's just say, less than ideal battery performance. On a normal day, I would unplug my iPhone in the morning and be deep into the red zone by the time I sat down for dinner. No exceptions there. The 16E, however, consistently ended the day with at least 50% battery left. And on more than one occasion, I would wrap the day or the night with 70% still remaining, which is just bonkers. Keep in mind that this is with CarPlay running while moving around and turn-by-turn Waze navigation active during every drive. I honestly think the C1 chip deserved way more attention than Apple Intelligence. You see, the C1 isn't just another feature, it's tech that's deeply woven into how iOS actually works. Reuters shared an example that stuck with me. If the 16E runs into a congested data network, the chip can tell the modem which traffic matters most, like a FaceTime call or a live stream, and prioritize it on the fly. According to Apple's Vice President of Wireless Software, this makes the phone feel more in tune with what you need in every moment. Now, in case you're wondering, yes, I am reminded on a daily basis that this is an entry-level iPhone. Despite the 6.1-inch OLED display being just as sharp as the flagship models, it is noticeably dimmer. The most obvious reminder are my constant attempts to bump up the brightness when I'm outside, only to realize, right, this is the more affordable one. That same feeling hits when I open the camera. I was recently checking out an apartment with a real estate broker and I wanted to shoot a quick walkthrough video, only to be reminded that I don't have an ultra-wide lens anymore. And ever since switching, I've realized just how often I actually use it. Things aren't super wide in the front-facing department either, but I think the quality is rather nice. But if I switch to the rear cameras and try and record myself, this is what it looks like. So yeah, it isn't very wide, but at least it is fairly reliable and typical for the iPhone. Taking photos is another moment where I feel like I left my Pro model behind in the wild. Shots from the 16E are fine. They are in fact as good as the light that is being introduced, but there's this odd flatness to them, like they're missing a layer of depth. They are okay, but there's definitely a bit of that old school iPhone energy that creeps in. So reason number 3 for my switch, and this is actually very important to understand or to clarify to you, is that I also carry an Android flagship with me at all times. And for the most part, that's my primary device. That gives me that bit of breathing room when it comes to the 16E's limitations, especially the camera. It lets me enjoy this phone for what it's best at, just being a really solid phone. Is it too expensive for what it offers? Absolutely. Are there better Android options at that price point? No doubt. Is this a decent entry-level iPhone? Sure. But I'd still recommend checking out the 15 Pro on, let's say, Amazon. For just $50 or $60 more than the starting price of the 16E, you're getting a significantly more capable device. If the 16E was priced at, let's say, $499, I think it will be a total banger. And honestly, I'm really curious to see what the iPhone 17 lineup will bring, especially when it comes to battery life and cellular performance. Okay, real talk. Should I stay with the 16E, which I'm totally fine with for the reasons that I shared in this video, or should I go back to the 16 Pro, which now that I've been putting together this video kind of feels very premium compared to this phone. Not bad at all, but you know, it's a throwback. So let me know in the comments below and I will follow your advice. If you enjoyed this video, then you should definitely check out my Apple Park Tour episode in Cupertino, which is linked right here. Like and subscribe to the channel, as well as my newsletter, and as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. This is Z, over and out.